On behalf of GBES, we're really excited to be hosting this conversation in our space because we want to fully support the 100% clean energy plan in Atlanta. And one of the best ways to do that is with more rooftop solar. So our first speaker today is going to be Matt Cox. He's a Georgia Tech grad, go Jackets. And he modeled 500 buildings in the 2016 Atlanta Better Building Challenge in his software to demonstrate the monetary benefit of avoided diseases like stroke and heart attack by cleaning up our energy profile. I've been really impressed by that work, and so I'm excited to hear more about it. And what he does is energy data-driven public health modeling. So he's going to kick us off and tell us about the value and the importance of why clean energy is good for our health. So Matt, why don't you tell us what you got?
Sure. So I'm going to build, what I've pulled together today is building off of the work that we did in assisting Atlanta's 100% clean energy plan and trying to take a look more specifically at what this means for the commercial sector. So I think that's where a bit of our focus is going to be here. So trying to take a look at some work that we did that's taken a look at Atlanta's building stocks, particular about 300 buildings that we have taken a look at. That's not just the Atlanta Better Buildings Challenge stock, but across a couple of neighborhoods within town, and then showing what the trends look like. So what that potential could mean for us. So for those of us who are not familiar with GreenLink, we're a clean energy research and consulting firm. We're based downtown. We're in Virginia Highlands. And so this is myself and my CTO. We're two PhDs in climate and energy policy out of Georgia Tech. We've got about 100 research publications between the two of us. So specifically where we headed, these are kind of the bounds that we pulled out of our business as usual projection for solar in the commercial sector, and a more of a high penetration level that would be driven, in this case, by the assumption that we would have programs like Solarize going on probably once every 5 years or so, trying to juice the market forward. This is also enabled by things that the city of Atlanta has been working on for years, like PACE financing, the property assessed clean energy financing. So just trying to get more opportunities for more people to pursue solar, in this case on commercial buildings. And so we get a range, there's a little variability right now, but we're seeing pretty strong growth. This is about 12 to 15% compound annual growth for the sector just through 2025. This was bumped down a little bit, so these numbers are a little lower than what our projections were, say, this time last year. Due to the imposition of things like tariffs and trade policy changes. So if we're going to make that happen, we've got a question of how do we get there. So the graphic on the left, you've got the border of Atlanta superimposed on top of some LiDAR and satellite data of solar potentials across the entirety of the city of Atlanta. So the brighter the color, the yellower the color, the better the potential is there. When we were doing our analysis here, we only brought in buildings that could achieve at least 75% of the expected annual generation from what we would consider a good solar installation in the city. So you can see a lot of that lines up through the downtown corridors that we're looking at, Buckhead, Midtown, downtown. There's good potential there. There's also stuff out towards like Cumberland that's also going to come in as being good targets. So then the questions become where? So the other parts of this are showing us building types where we've identified strong potentials. So we've got hospitals, retail, large office, schools, all identified here. What we're seeing is that we could see anywhere between an 8 to 12% reduction in demand for what we would think of as a standard installation on these building types. That's going to be focusing on trying to keep as much of that power used on site as possible to maximize financial returns. So that's kind of the range that we were looking at here. we look at the average solar capacity, we can see that that's also similar to the one before, aligning with the total amount of reduction in total demand we're seeing. So we're seeing anywhere from about 100,000 kilowatt hours up to 2 million kilowatt hours that might be offset from that. And then obviously like large flat rooftops like what you'd see at a hospital looks like a great opportunity within that space. Overall, in terms of looking at the different financing options, self-financing and SEPAs, so entering into a contract as a solar energy procurement agreement. Thanks, Don. It's basically an agreement that you're going to pay a certain cent per kilowatt hour that comes off of that panel over a certain number of years. That's been popular with several governments that have gone into this. So we've got the City of Atlanta is in one, Macon is in one. There's other cities that are going through that process now that are looking at getting into SEPAs, but they're open to everybody. So you can get in if you'd like to pursue that. That's a possibility, and it's something that the Solarize program has enabled. So if people are interested in pursuing that, they can. Part of the reason we're expecting to see greater adoption through things like Solarize is that the overall pricing that's being offered is about 20% better than what we were seeing in the marketplace just as a whole without it. So things do become more cost effective as a result of that. And when we took a look at these series of buildings, here we were looking at payback periods. So basically you can see from here, everything that's above this little line is cost effective. And so that's showing us that pretty much everything that gets self-financed has an opportunity to be cost effective on average. And for most of them, going through the SEPA still also looks like a cost effective option. It's really a question of how you bring money to the table to go forward with that. But we were looking generally at simple paybacks of somewhere between 5 to 7 to 8 years for the commercial sector in this analysis. So I think that's pretty much everything I wanted to bring today. But if there's questions, more than happy to field those. And if we just want to switch to the next person, I'm more than happy to get out of the chair.
It's a general question. Why is it the most cost-effective to self-finance?
Because you're bringing the money directly to it, so there's not another set of players in the process. So with a solar energy procurement agreement or with like a PPA in general, there's typically a breakdown between what the developer is doing, who's financing the project. There's intermediaries that are going to want to return for the money that they're bringing to the table.
Okay.
So there's a few more players that get involved with it that make it a little more expensive to pursue, typically. But it also, you get out of the process, you don't need to have the money up front to pursue that. So for a lot of, especially the cities that we've done work with, that's been attractive to them, is that we can still get they want the benefit of having solar on the rooftop. So if they can do that at little or no cost, or it'll pay off over the long run, they're going to be there for the next 20 years, so they're more than happy to engage in that.
So try to cut out the middlemen and keep the money in your own pocket.
Yes, the finances will look a little better that way.
Okay, great. And just to encourage some folks outside of Atlanta, I know that you're also working with lots of municipalities all over the nation. Can you just maybe mention quickly who else you're helping to support with some good data-driven decision making?
Sure, that's the opportunity for a free plug. So we're helping Orlando right now develop their 100% renewable energy plan. We've just finished projects in Reno and Des Moines. We're bringing some stuff on with several other cities in the Southeast and in New England and in the Midwest. So we've done work with a couple dozen cities right now on clean energy broadly. So whether that's energy efficiency or solar or both, or developing plans, that's a lot of the work that we're engaged with.
Love it. So thank you so much. Any other questions? Great.
The map that you had with the city of Atlanta and the solarity, where'd you get that data?
So it's a mix of things that we pull from NREL and from Google Project Sunroof.
Okay.
And so they make they make the pretty looking charts, and then we do some of our own adjustments to what's on top of that. But they have that for a number of communities across the country, Atlanta being one of them. I think some of their estimates of actual solar potential when they get into what you would expect productivity to be are where we've got more questions about it.
Mm-hmm.
But the way that they do a lot of their analysis on shading and that kind of stuff tends to be pretty good for a first cut.
You mentioned kind of the 12 to 15% growth. Is that a nationwide growth, or is that just for the city of Atlanta?
That's Atlanta specific.
Okay.
Yeah, so we take a look at what the industry trends are, and we'll figure out, based on customer behavior, at the lowest level that we can, how things are moving. So in Atlanta, that was actually a massive pain to try to calculate. Some cities are served essentially by one utility, and that's all the utility does. And so in that case, they have to report information back to the federal government, and that makes it fairly simple if you know how to pull down the price data to figure out really how customers are responding to changes in price signals. For us, that's not the case. Georgia Power is more broad than the city of Atlanta specifically. So we got into some detailed work with Sean Aurora's map at South Base, taking a look at how many solar installations of what kind and size were in which congressional districts to piece together the whole look for the city of Atlanta in specifics. When those were installed, what price they paid, what kind of productivity they were getting, so that we could account for things. We could account for things like the change in overall manufacturers' capacity. So how is the industry trending, and that's mostly like a global picture. What's happening at that scale? But then we could also look at what's the learning by the developers locally. How are their prices changing, and then what's the consumer response locally to those things. And so that allows us to really get a whole kind of learning curve, customer price elasticity of response. Like there's a lot of econ math that goes into producing that, but you can see those changes and then go, okay, well, when we add the tariffs, how is that going to impact things?
What other, aside from tariffs, what other kind of policy changes or considerations did you have for that growth curve?
So for this year, one of the other big things that changed was the tax law. So getting the bonus depreciation in there. We plugged that into more of the assisting on the max side to kind of bump that line higher. But that's something certainly available for the rest of this year, for the projects that get going this year. That will help the commercial installations in particular. There's also the ITC, the change in the investment tax credit. So where that is right now, and then how that steps down over time. And then we're assuming that the tariffs are following the plan that was announced in January. But of course, as that goes through its WTO proceedings, things could change there. Historically, they do, right? So we've got to see what happens. This is kind of based on what's on paper at the moment.
I'm wondering if you have any other insider knowledge about other states that are going to follow behind Hawaii of adopting clean energy as a statewide initiative.
Well, I mean, California is the most high-profile example right now. I mean, they've got bills in their legislature that are moving that look like they've got some support. I don't know whether those are going to pass.
Sounds like there's a little pushback, though, as well.
Yeah.
Happening.
Yeah, I think a lot of that actually will come down to what their professionals think, the ones who are running things like CalISO.
Okay.
So the grid operator, how that integrates with the Western imbalance market that they've been trying to set up there, which would allow it to call on resources and exchange resources between the other bordering states more easily, streamline that process, make it so that you've got a much bigger footprint that comes into balancing electricity demand throughout that entire space. That's also been a contentious issue that's gone back and forth for several years, but also looks like it's got some steam moving forward right now. I think if something like that were to happen, it would enable more of this kind of activity to go forward because you'd have fewer transmission constraints. You wouldn't have, basically you'd have resilience to the grid itself. So some of these issues we have around like wildfires burning in Northern California could be more easily handled. So yeah, there's a lot of benefits to bringing that along. The market would also be more fluid, so things could move more rapidly,
Yeah.
which some people would like and some people wouldn't. But we'd have to. I think that would assist. If they think that that's going to go forward, I think that improves the chances that a policy like that's actually successful.
Great.
But I think those are still kind of TBDs, I guess.
Right.
Yeah.
But it sounds like there's a lot of opportunity and hope.
Yeah,
So
sure.
that's great. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing your piece. So our next speaker is going to be Don Moreland, founder of Solar Crowdsource. He's also the chair of the Georgia Solar Energy Association. And through Solar Crowdsource has facilitated over half of all the residential solar in Georgia. So that right there is evidence that this program works. And it is contributing to the fastest solar adoption that we've probably ever seen in this state. Previous to Solarize Atlanta, Solar Crowdsource supported campaigns in Athens, Decatur, DeKalb, and Dunwoody. And there are active campaigns in 3 Georgia cities right now, not only Atlanta, but Newton, as well as Carrollton. So thanks for being here, Don.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Thank you to GBES for hosting this conference today and broadcasting live. No pressure at all. Oh, I don't know what happened here. Let me see if I can get this back up here. All right. All right, and thank you, Allison, for that kind introduction. We've got a couple other Solarize programs coming up too. We're excited about. Maybe I'll talk about in just a little bit. Solarize Atlanta, it's a big town, right? So we wanted to make sure that we addressed each individual market with the attention it deserves. So we divided it up, and we have 3 different working groups. We have a residential working group, we have a commercial and nonprofit working group, which we're going to talk about today, and then we have a equity working group, because there's in terms of energy justice and having solar more affordable for lower income folks, it's important that we address those issues in Atlanta, and it's a very difficult thing to do. We're trying everything we can, but it's just the policy framework here in Georgia is difficult, to say the least. A lot of things that would help low income folks use more solar energy and be more sustainable are not possible here in Georgia. So, but let's go ahead and turn the page and talk about our commercial working group. But first I want to introduce and just make sure everybody understands that this is a grassroots movement with a lot of different organizations involved. It all comes out of a vacuum, that there's not a whole lot of solar friendly policies in Georgia and in Atlanta for rooftop solar, for distributed generation. We're doing really good with large scale solar. Georgia is 10th in the country with total solar capacity installed, but 92% of that is attributed to utility scale solar. So this is those solar farms that you might see popping up all over the state, and those are folks who are developing these large solar projects and selling that electricity directly back to the utility. That is, this program is distributed generation. It's more about rooftop solar. It's about solar behind the meter. So this program is more concerned about folks who want to purchase solar to generate their own energy with their own property, and will help offset their electricity bill and save money. The more folks you have involved with the Solarize program on a local level, the more successful the program is going to be. We're seeing a lot of success out of Solarize Atlanta, but we really owe it to a lot of these organizations who are helping us get the word out. Just real quick on the agenda, I'm going to talk about solar basics and some of the challenges we see with rooftop solar. Why is solar now? This will be my favorite part of this particular presentation. And then we'll talk about what is Solarize, what are the benefits of Solarize, and commercial sample. I want everybody to leave here having a better idea of what, not just esoterically, what are these size systems and what do these prices mean? I want to show you an example of what it'll actually mean in a real life example. So the solar market generally, I spoke about Georgia being the 10th, ranked 10th in the U.S. for solar installed. So I do have to update my presentation. I have it ranked 8th here, but some states are kind of passing us by in that. We were the third fastest growing solar state in the country, but I think we've slipped a couple of notches on that one too. I've really got to update this slide because our solar jobs in Georgia, we're up to about 4,300 solar jobs in Georgia. We did experience a little bit of a hit due to the tariffs that Matt spoke of, but we're still seeing a strong solar growth in Georgia. And over $2 billion has been invested. So aside from the environmental advantages and the more positive health outcomes, which are obviously very important when it comes to energy generation, I really focus on the job creation and the economic development aspect of solar for the state of Georgia. We're on a growth trend. Some of you might be aware that we've got a couple of new solar plants that are coming to Georgia. That it'll increase our capacity quite a bit in terms of how much we generate. We did have a couple of solar plants before, assembly plants in Georgia, but they have since gone by the wayside. But now we're seeing kind of a resurgence in folks who are using Georgia and coming into Georgia to manufacture solar panels and solar equipment. Okay, so why isn't there solar on every rooftop in Atlanta? This is a good question, and I talked about solar policies earlier. When you're flying into the airport in Atlanta and you see all of those giant rooftops, right near the airport, and at least for me, I'm looking at those rooftops and I'm salivating, thinking like, what a great place to put solar power. But there's a reason why we don't see more solar in Georgia, and it's not because Georgia has great solar resources. We're not as when you look at New Mexico and Arizona, that's kind of the heart of where the most solar generation is in the country. But here in the southeast, Georgia is right up there. We have more solarity here in Georgia than they do in Germany, which is the #1 solar market in the entire world. Even New Jersey is ahead of Georgia as far as how much solar is available there. And it's not because they have more sun in New Jersey. It's all about policy. And in Georgia, we used to have a state tax credit of 35% that you could get, and but that has since been spent. We had people latched onto that right away, and that amount, there was a certain allocated amount for that 35% tax credit, and it's been exhausted for years. Utilities are not offering rebates like some of them used to. We don't have a net metering policy here in Georgia. We have what's called bidirectional metering in Georgia. And to briefly explain that, a net metering, which a lot of states do have, is is where if you have solar on your property and you're generating more solar than what you're consuming, then you can sell that electricity back to the utility and they'll pay you their retail rate for that electricity. So if you pay them 12 cents a kilowatt hour, then they will net you out and pay you 12 cents a kilowatt hour for the energy that you send back to the grid. Here in Georgia, we have what's called avoided cost. Think of it as wholesale. And the amount that, I think the latest filing from Georgia Power on this issue is, they'll pay maybe somewhere around 3.5 cents for the energy that you send back to the grid. And if you think about it, it's good that they're paying you something for the energy that you send back, but unless you're a full-on 24/7 operation, right, where you are, where your doors are open 24/7 and 7 days a week, 365 days a year, when you think of churches and when you think of schools and municipal buildings and a lot of office buildings like the one that we're in today that aren't open and using as much electricity on the weekends, it's important. Because if you're generating more electricity, you're not getting the full value for it. And so you're going to do one of two things. You're either going to sell that electricity back and not get the full return on your investment back because you're selling it at a wholesale cost, or you're going to size that system a lot smaller than you otherwise would. And so both of those consequences affect the solar market here in Georgia. And then there's, and I won't get too much into this, but there is a rule in Georgia where we have a limit on how much you can export back to the grid. For residential, it's 10 kilowatts. So if you build any system larger than 10 kilowatts, then the utility company can turn around and say, yeah, thanks for the energy, but we're not going to pay you anything for it.
Is there an actual physical barrier, or that's just a financial barrier?
It's a policy barrier. Okay. It's a legal barrier. Particularly in, I'm going to butcher this, but it's the Distributed Generation and Cogeneration Act of 2001, where it prescribes what these limits are. And there's reasons for that, where I think some of the concern is the grid capacity. Okay, so if the grid is built on being able to deliver to a property a certain amount of energy, and suddenly there's more of that, more energy than what they designed that grid for going back, then it could cause problems down the line. But the reality of it is a lot of times that's not true. It's just kind of an arbitrary number that they put out there. And in most cases, the grid can handle a lot more than what these limits are, but they have to, I guess, set the limit somewhere. What we'd like to see here more in Georgia is, to do more of a study on what the grid capability is on site and have a more precise and case-by-case analysis of how much you can send back to the grid. For commercial, according to this act, it is 100 kilowatts. So you can imagine if you have a large box department store. Well, let me think about something different. I don't know. So like a manufacturing facility, let's say, that's closed on the weekends. Okay, if they're only allowed to send 100 kilowatts of the energy, or if they're only required to purchase 100 kilowatts of the energy back from the person that's generating it, then it limits the size of the system that the manufacturing facility might want to put on their rooftop. So it's a policy barrier. So these are not market barriers; these are policy barriers. Now, I should say that although the law says 100 kilowatts, and most utilities in Georgia follow the 100 kilowatt rule for commercial, Georgia Power and the Public Service Commission recently has agreed to lift that to 250 kilowatts through their R&R rate. So we are seeing some incremental progress in that regard, but it's still a barrier.
That same law also called for the creation of that metering in the state of Georgia.
Yeah.
And that was a portion of Georgia Power's SP1 and SP2 programs that they're now winding down and retiring. Do you know what they're planning to replace that with so that they still are complying with the GBES?
I know of no plans whatsoever that they are replacing that with. In fact, the customers that I've had that were on the SP1 and SP2 plans have gotten letters from Georgia Power saying that they're discontinuing that program, and it's leaving a lot of folks in kind of a lurch. They're not phasing it out. There's not another program, so folks are having to go back and reconfigure their systems. So instead of selling that electricity back to Georgia Power, they need to reconfigure their system so they can consume that electricity, which is costing them a lot of money and some financial hardship as a result. If anybody knows of a backup plan that they have, I'd love to hear more about it, but I just haven't heard that. Okay, so why solar now? This is my favorite part of the show. So we talked about tax credits before. Tax credits are great. For every residential and commercial application, there's a 30% tax credit available. And that's a tax credit, not a deduction. So it's a dollar for dollar credit. And it's a great incentive that has helped the growth of solar in the nation. But that begins to phase out after 2019. So it'll be 30% for 2018, 30% for 2019, but then it drops down to 26% in 2020, 22% after that, and so forth and so on. So if you're a commercial building and you have a tax liability, and you want to take full credit of the tax credit that's available, then you want to get your system in by the end of next year to get the full 30%. So this is one reason why we want to look at why solar now. Another reason is that the effect on the tariffs that we spoke about earlier aren't as bad as we thought on residential and commercial buildings. It's really affecting the utility scale market a lot more. And the reason is because the tariff is only on solar panels. And the overall cost of an installation, solar panels take up less of the overall cost for residential and commercial than they do for utility scale. So the tariffs aren't as bad, and they will phase out. But here's a big one, is that there's a rate case at the Public Service Commission next year. And a lot of people might not know, but in 2016, Georgia Power made a deal with the Public Service Commission to freeze rates, and it was a part of the bargaining with the acquisition of AGL, the $12 billion acquisition that they had with AGL. So in 2016, they froze rates, and that's good for the next 3 years, but that rate case is going to come up again in 2019. So a lot of the things that have happened since then, including Plant Vogel, cost overruns, and the actual acquisition of AGL itself, all those things are going to come to roost in 2019, and the projection is that rates will, at a minimum, resume their historic rise, which is 2.5% annually since the last 21 years. The rates have gone up around 2.5% annually. But other folks are projecting that rates are going to go up much more than that. A lot's going to happen next year at the Public Service Commission. So as you can see with these three charts, there's this little window of opportunity. Okay, if you want to take full advantage of the tax credits and you want to get your system in before rates start to increase, then you want to start thinking about solar now, between 2018 and 2019. The reason why rates are so important here is because solar works as a hedge against raising utility rates. It's one of these set it and leave it technologies. There's no moving parts. It's all passive technology, very little operating and maintenance costs. So once you buy it, the sun is free. There's no additional fuel costs or anything like that. So every time the rates increase, your return on investment improves over time. So this chart represents a 2.5% increase annually over the next few years. And so we think between that, between the tax credits phasing out, and between the incredible pricing that we see here in Solarize Atlanta, which we'll talk about in a minute, now is the time. And actually, for any of you folks who might be sustainability directors or property managers or anything like that, I've started making this shift from you should consider solar as a smart investment for your property and for your company to you may be fiscally irresponsible if you don't consider solar between now and the end of 2019, because it's just there's this little window of opportunity where if you're going to do it, you want to do it now in order to maximize your return on your investment. So Solarize is a community-based bulk purchasing program. The whole idea is to remove barriers for people going solar. We did a competitive bid process. We put an RFP out there, and we got some bids, and Hannah Solar won the bid for commercial solar. Hannah is one of the most reputable solar companies in all of the Southeast, and you know they're kind of a beacon in the Georgia and Atlanta area as far as solar companies are concerned. But they didn't win just based on their reputation. They won because they're offering the best materials at the lowest possible price. So when you couple that with their stellar reputation as a great contractor, it was really a no-brainer for us. So when we did the evaluations, we looked at not just the contractor, but we vetted the materials, we vetted the pricing, and we did all of that homework so all the other folks don't have to. So one of the barriers with going solar is that it's just complicated. There's a lot of stuff going on. You know, if you're gonna, especially if you're a sustainability director or a property management company, you have to be really careful about decisions that you make because solar is a long-term investment. You're going to do research on the equipment and on the installer, all the warranties and the pricing and all that kind of thing. And we feel like these Solarize programs through the program, we've been able to vet all of that stuff for you so you don't have to. So we make it more affordable and accessible. Solarize programs are not new. They've been around for a while. I need to update this slide too because there's probably been over 300 in the country so far. And they're not new here in Georgia either. The first one was in Solarize Tybee, which Hannah Solar won that bid down there as well. And then we had Solarize Athens, and then Solarize Savannah was kind of a 2.0 of Solarize Tybee. Solarize Decatur DeKalb was the most successful Solarize program so far in terms of total capacity that we installed in the DeKalb County and Decatur area. We increased the amount of solar in that area about 600-fold during that campaign. So there's really remarkable success there. And then we had Solarize Dunwoody, which Tina here was the chairman of that committee, and now Solarize Atlanta. And as Allison mentioned before, we've got Carrollton, Newton, and we're really excited about Middle Georgia coming up in September. So why Solarize? It's really because of the pricing and the ease of which we can help people go solar. So one thing is that there's no return on your investment when you're paying your utility bill. This is an expense you're going to keep paying year after year after year, and you're never going to get a return on that money. So solar is a great investment for the property. It will work as a hedge against raising utility rates, which we talked about. Solar has been proven to add value to buildings, whether it be residential or commercial. And if you think about it, it makes sense, right? Because if you're generating your own electricity on your own property, then you're more independent, you're more resilient, you're more sustainable, and you're reducing the overall operating cost it takes to run that building. So there's lots of studies out there that have proven it does increase the value. We talked about the tax incentives. Oh, and by the way, it's clean and renewable energy, okay? Talked about the maintenance and Solar is good for Georgia's economy, and that's what I get really excited. I'm not a very exciting date, but I love talking about how renewable energy and clean energy can affect Georgia's economy. Just a quick moment on that. Am I running out of time, Allison?
No.
And I say this a lot, and so if anybody's heard it before, but what people don't realize is that we don't have a lot of natural resources here in Georgia. We don't have our own coal mines, or we don't do a lot of our own natural gas or oil reserves. We import all of that stuff here. We're really dearth in natural resources as far as that goes. We pay about $25 billion annually to import fossil fuels into this state, only to burn them up and create electricity, but it'll also pollute our water and our air, and it doesn't help with positive health outcomes either. So when I get excited about the economic impact of renewable energy, it's all about harnessing what's already out there. It's about using our own land with our own natural resources, the sun, to generate our own electricity, and we have the technology. It's like that's a movie line somewhere. But so between solar, battery storage, electric vehicles, grid modernization, Internet of Things, all of these things are out there. All we have to do is really take it and make it our own. And instead of exporting $25 billion a year, we could be exporting new technologies and new innovation and generating wealth for our own state and our own city. So I really think it's the economic opportunity of a lifetime that we're looking at here, and we want more people to embrace that. And solar does provide benefits to the utility company, and Matt would be the expert to talk about this, but all I can say is that when you're generating electricity in the place where the electricity is being consumed, then you're not having to import that electricity from large power plants from miles and miles away. And so you're cutting down on not just the transmission and distribution and the energy losses associated with transmitting that energy from a long distance, but you're also reducing the burden of the stress on the grid during peak hours. It just so happens that when people are using electricity the most during the summertime and during the hot summer months when the electricity is cranking, that's when solar is generating the most electricity. So solar can actually be used to help alleviate some of the stress on the grid and actually reduce the overall energy burden. So solar benefits, again, this is not our chart for Atlanta, it's just a chart, but we can achieve lower costs, like Matt said, about 20% through a lot of different ways. There's not one silver bullet, but it's by doing a lot of different things and trying to do them the right way. What I would like to leave you with is that the benefits are vetted contractors, vetted materials, predetermined pricing, and trusted solar evaluations. So when we chose Hanna Solar, we know their reputation, and we know that they know how to right-size these systems, and that the assumptions they use for their modeling, and we know that when they give a proposal and a contract to a customer, that it's a true representation of what that solar can generate. Now, here's the sample I was talking about before. This is for a 100 kilowatt system at $2 per watt. I should note that the pricing for Atlanta is already cheaper than that through Hanna Solar. They're in tier 1 offering $1.85, and once we get to the 250 kilowatt level, once we're able to aggregate up to 250 kilowatts, and that price drops to $1.55. So this sample is higher than what you're even going to see here, but for a 100 kilowatt system at $2 a watt, that's a price of $200,000 with the 30% tax credit plus the bonus depreciation. Your net after year one is almost half the original cost of 104.3, and then it'll take you 5 years, or around 5 years to get your payback on that. We're talking about a 25-year product here. We're talking about a system that is, the panels and most of the system components are warranted for much, much longer. So a 5-year payback on a product that's going to last for 25 years is a great payback indeed. And then your ROI, your return on your investment, this is a simple calculation, but around 17.5%. And then your net savings over the 25-year period of time, when you compare that to the original price, it's a no-brainer. So when I say that you might be fiscally irresponsible if you don't consider solar now, this is what we're talking about. Here's a way to finance your system, this is just a simple half down, half debt scenario. So for that same $200,000 100 kilowatt system, if you put half of that down, $100,000, and you finance the other half at 5% for 10 years, you see your tax credit and your total offset, your net down after year one is only $4,300. The system will pay for itself after that. So here's how the cash flow goes. Your savings for this size system, and let's see, I think I used 10 cents a kilowatt at a 2.5% annual increase. So you see how your savings will increase every year, but your debt service on using these terms will remain the same, and your net cash flow continues to increase every single year. So this model, this 50 is real simple, but this 50% down, 50% debt model allows you to get your money back as quickly as possible through the tax incentives if you can monetize it, but also allows you to cash flow very, very easily. Your payback, simple payback on that is based on a cash flow, so it's only 3 years. ROI increases, and your net savings, even after the debt is paid in full, is quite remarkable. Here's what a solar energy procurement agreement looks like. This is what Matt was talking about before. If you don't put any money down, you have somebody else come onto your rooftop. They build it, own it, maintain it, operate it, and they take all the tax credit themselves. So these are the benefits. The developer will own it, and what happens is the property owner purchases all the electricity that's produced from the solar array. Depending on the cost per watt, actually we can get this down now even more with some of the CEPA providers that we've talked to. We can get this down to around 9 cents, possibly, so I need to update this slide as well. The annual escalator for a CEPA will be around 1 to 3%, which is lower or right at the amount of the historical amount that we've seen with Georgia Power. They're typically 20-year terms with an option to purchase in year 7 or somewhere thereabouts. So there's some opportunities there. The Solarize Atlanta timeline, real quick. Our sign-up phase will go through October, the end of October for commercial, and then we have until the end of April for contracts. And so let me explain that a little bit further, is that we're running this campaign and we're giving folks an opportunity to sign up. And when they sign up, they're able to lock in the discount pricing and get a free solar evaluation from Hannah Solar, okay? That will end on October 31st. What we find is a lot of people sign up at the end of the program. So we want to give people more time to get their ducks in a row, financing or permitting or engineering and stuff like that. So for this program, we're given an additional 6 months after the end of the enrollment period to get your contracts in. And that is the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dawn. I just want to help add a little pressure here. So I know a lot of our audience of GBES manages LEED buildings, and they're probably tracking Energy Star scores. And if you're tracking Energy Star, you know that scores are about to drop because they're updating the baseline. So getting involved in something like this can help boost that Energy Star score. It can help you recertify for a higher level of LEED certification. And I'm just amazed at these payback periods, right? I think there's a myth that solar is some kind of 10, 20-year ROI. And you just showed us 3 to 5 year ROIs. So I just wanted to reiterate that and really impress on everybody that this is the time. Like, this is the sweet spot. It's never been better to get solar on your building, to take part in the bulk purchasing, and to get a really quick payback. And I know it can be challenging to work in commercial real estate, right? Sometimes it takes a long time, but I know a lot of us out there, asset managers, property managers, it's in your 10-year plan, it's in your 5-year plan, but really start this conversation and get it into your 2-year plan, right? 2019, we're gonna lock in those contracts, but get a free evaluation now. We're about to hear from Trey. He's gonna walk us through what that could look like. But I just wanted to, again, kind of reiterate the connection to LEED, the connection to Energy Star scores. If you're tracking this, if you're committed to being a leader in the green building movement, it is going to be essential. It is quickly becoming fiscally irresponsible. I love that you put that challenge out there.
And a lot of organizations have sustainability goals, and so this is a great way to, in addition to other things, energy efficiency and things that they can, in a very high profile way, and maybe get some media attention out of it, be able to meet their sustainability goals while going clean and renewable energy.
And are you going to have support with that, help people with their PR statements and their marketing?
Part of the Solarize program.
Awesome.
So every commercial project that we do, there will be a media push and a press release, or it comes in all shapes and sizes, but there will be media around each and every commercial project.
Yeah, because look at all these logos. This is not just an isolated event. This is truly a coalition effort. We've got the US GBC in the room here today. They are fully backing and supporting this. And I think we had a question.
I have a couple of questions. So I missed it. The 30% rebate, is that state, federal, or city of Atlanta?
It's a federal tax credit.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's no check. And the depreciation in your example, it looked like that was in the first year. Can you depreciate? Can you elaborate on how that works? Do you get that rebate, right then and there in that first year, or is that amortized over the year?
So that's a great question. Part of the new tax bill this year includes 100% bonus depreciation in year 1. So whereas before, we've seen things in the past like 50% depreciation, and solar qualifies as accelerate, for an accelerated depreciation program under MAKERS, the modified accelerated cost recovery system, yes, which is usually a 5 to 6 year depreciation schedule. But right now for 2018, and I think 2019 too, you can depreciate 100% of the project. So that calculation is actually based on 100% depreciation in year 1 at a 25% corporate tax credit. The other thing is that if you can't absorb the full tax credit or the depreciation in year 1, you can carry it forward in subsequent years. So it's not like you're going to lose it if you don't use it.
So that's specific for commercial buildings then? Or
Yes.
does that apply to residential?
Residential, you don't get depreciation in residential, correct?
Okay.
This is why the returns are always a little bit better with commercial.
So because you mentioned there's 2 big solar farms coming to Georgia, I assume the policies that you've discussed are they don't apply to like a solar farm specifically, or are solar farms capped? I guess they probably have their own policies around that.
No, they get both the tax credit and the depreciation as well.
But I mean, the cap as far as how much you sell back to the grid.
No, yeah, that's a special program.
Okay.
That's through the Public Service Commission. Yeah.
How about just wanted to check for anybody that maybe was thinking about a solar farm. So what? And this might be a better question for Trey. Like, what kind of building types have you seen so far signing on? Is it mostly commercial? Is it a mix of residential? Just kind of curious how it's kind of playing out.
We have almost 600 folks that have signed up for the program so far. We're a little bit more than halfway through our enrollment period. Well, we have a even more enrollment period for commercial, so we're not even quite halfway through. A majority of those are residential. We have about 35 to 40 folks, I think, that are signed up through commercial, and Trey can answer this so far. And the building types we're seeing most right now, we're seeing a lot of retail, a lot of owner-occupied buildings. Things get more complicated when you're leasing a building and you don't own it. There's still ways to work through it, so it's real important that you work with the folks at HANA to kind of go through these different ways that you can navigate the policies and navigate the ownership structures. But one of the things that we're seeing a lot of that we're particularly interested in is parking decks, capping off parking decks with a canopy system. We probably shouldn't name some of these folks now, but they're iconic organizations and corporations in Georgia, in Atlanta, that are looking at large systems on their roof to put canopies on the top level of their parking deck. So we're really excited about those opportunities.
So you mentioned the different registration period for residential and commercial. Do they both end at the end of October?
No, the residential will end at the end of August, and then the commercial will end at the end of October. And there are different sunset periods. Yeah, those are the sign-up periods, and then our contract dates are different for residential and commercial too. It's on the website, solarizeatl.com. You can get that information up there. And the reason for that is commercial is just it's a different animal. There's a lot more people in the decision-making process, and they're longer sales cycles, so we want to give those folks some extra time.
Cool. Just two more questions from me. So I guess solarizeatlanta.com is where you go to sign up.
Solarizeatl.com. Yeah. Solarize Atlanta was already taken.
Sorry. Thanks for clarifying. And then last question, what's the current Georgia power rate, do you know? Because I'm thinking about your third example there and the cost. So do you know what it is, about a kilowatt hour?
It'll vary on whatever rate plan you're with and how much electricity you consume. Matt, you're the resource. I think I could answer that question for residential, but what are we looking at for commercial?
Commercial rates range anywhere from about 6 cents if you've got large, very flat loads, up to we've seen over 30 cents on average for a site that's got very large peaky loads, like say an auditorium, a human pool in an auditorium. So yeah, there's a wide variety, in large part driven by those demand charges that will come along.
Cool. So it seems like anybody with a commercial building should at least compare their cost with, if it's greater than the 12 or 13%, they're just getting even the finance it all 100%. It's a no-brainer to sign on and start saving on their.
Yeah, and the story will be told really after the 2019 rate case, when we see what the rates will be for the next 3 years, and then after that, unfortunately, the tax credit will begin to phase out at that time too. So that's why when we talk about this little window of opportunity, we know rates are going to go up. They always have. It's just a matter of how much they're going to go up. So whether it's 2.5% or 4%, like what some folks are prognosticating, it's still going to work as a hedge against the raising utility rates.
Okay, one more question when you just came to me. So with all these contracts people signing up, do they shoot for, 100% of their demand plus what they can sell back, or do they maybe just want to offset half of their demand? Like, what are you seeing there, or maybe maximizing just as much as they can, or what's kind of the trend?
It's all over the board. A lot of folks will just max out whatever rooftop space or ground mount space they have. Other folks will want to be more careful, not to do a smaller size, so they're not sending too much energy back to the utility company at that avoided wholesale cost. And I'm sure Trey will get into this, but it's important to look at what the load demand is that you have on the property, and then allow the experts at Hannah Solar to kind of guide you into how to right size that system to maximize the investment and your return.
Thank you, Don. So we heard about the why, because it's going to make us healthier, the how through these campaigns and bulk purchasing, and now let's hear from the who that will actually install it. So our next speaker is Trey Gibbs, Business Development Manager with Hannah Solar, who Don shared won the commercial contract to install all the solar on commercial buildings as part of the Solarize Atlanta campaign. Hannah Solar has installed 7.5 megawatts of grid-connected PV, so they are experts at this. You can trust that you're in good hands working with Hannah Solar. And an interesting fact is they also specialize in electric vehicle charging infrastructure. And I know that is going to be of particular interest to a lot of commercial buildings, because what are our occupants craving more than rooftop solar? They want charging stations for their Teslas. So tell us about how we're going to get there and how we can support more lead points, higher Energy Star scores by getting this solar at affordable pricing. So as we change presentations here, I'll just share a little bit more about, the unique timeline here. People talk about solar all the time, and they think it's out of reach. It's going to be too expensive. And I think we just saw here that there's a lot of different options, right? You don't have to finance it yourself. And this campaign actually hosts special financing workshops. So if you're interested in this, but you're still, not sure on how to make it work, contact us. Reach out to this team. They are here to support you. They want to walk you through this, help you find the right financing, and give you a free assessment, right? Everybody likes free stuff. So
That's right.
Trey, let us know how we can get a free assessment and learn how to make solar work at our commercial buildings.
Sure. Hey, I'm Trey Gibbs. I work with Hannah Solar. That's our headquarters there. We're located off Collier Road here in Atlanta. And we are the commercial installer. And so if you're interested in a solar installation, you can go to solarizeatlanta.com, put your information in, it will come to me, and we'll do an assessment, take a look at how much sun you get on your roof, and put together what your payback would be. We really just need a few data inputs. We'd like to see 12 months of your power bill, so we know how much energy you've used throughout the year. We know how much a solar panel can produce energy-wise throughout the year, and then we can show you what your payback would be over time. We have a residential team. I'm on the commercial and industrial sales team, and we also do utility scale. This is our website here. You'll see that splash page when you visit hannahsolar.com. This is a large roof that we did in North Carolina. It's a lot of the bread and butter work that we do. Large rooftop. That's the lowest cost installation. Is a 3-phase 480 volt building with a large flat roof. If that describes your building, you're in luck, because that's our lowest cost installation, as I mentioned. And we were founded in 2008, so we're a 10-year-old company. We get on the roof and do it right the first time, every time now. We've migrated to the best products in the industry, and we've worked on many different roof types, encountered many different situations. There's nothing that we can't counter, and there's really no installation that we haven't seen. We've done over 75 megawatts already, and we're licensed throughout the southeastern United States. We don't only do work in Georgia, but we're licensed in Tennessee, the Carolinas, Florida, Alabama, Mississippi, and we'll be starting our first installation in my home state of Louisiana next week. So here are a couple of headlines that are kind of driving everything. You know, nationally, solar is exploding worldwide, not just here in the United States, but renewable energy is outpacing fossil fuels. And this is Bloomberg New Energy Finance in 2015, a little bit dated 3 years ago. But that's when fossil fuels lost the race. They started losing in 2015. I was putting this presentation together last night, and I was watching American Ninja Warrior, and I really like this headline, that wind and solar are crushing fossil fuels. This is from 2016, so just a year later, the investment is now 2 to 1, and that's worldwide. So you often hear that in China and India, they're still building fossil fuels, but that's really not true. There's more investment worldwide going into renewables at a rate of 2 to 1, the investment that's going into fossil fuels. So if your company is not investing in renewable energy right now, you're really missing a big major trend that's happening worldwide in this new technology. It's clean tech, it's 21st century, and with the economics, the time has really come to look at investing when you're building renewable energy. Here locally, the state of Georgia, as mentioned by Don, we are 8th in the United States for installations. This information came out in 2017, uses 2016 data, but lots of jobs, one of which is mine. We have over 100 people working at Hannah Solar, for instance, so a lot of good clean jobs. You can't outsource. You got to have Americans getting on the roof, getting this stuff built. So we're really proud of those numbers. The city of Atlanta, even more locally, has a goal to have the entire community powered by 2035. The city wants its own city-owned buildings powered by 2025 by renewable energy. So some really robust goals. How are we going to get there? Well, we need private industry to get involved, everyone to start looking at their own buildings, and that's how we're going to get there. This is an installation that we did at the Peachtree 25th building. This is looking south toward downtown. And this is why commercial solar makes sense. As Don mentioned, you can get back up to 54% of your money back in the first year, and that's with the 30% federal tax credit and the depreciation schedule that is available. So that's a real significant value point. Tax credits, of course, mean that you're a for-profit entity and that you pay taxes so that you can utilize that tax credit. So 90% of the clientele that we sell to are owner-occupied buildings. People that own their building, they pay the power bill, they get that direct savings, and they're a profitable enterprise. They need tax credits and can utilize that. That's the real win-win for us. It becomes more difficult when the building's leased out. Someone owns the building, someone else is paying the power bill. There tends to be a disconnect there. If it's a not-for-profit, you're missing out on 54% of the value here since you don't get the tax credit. So for not-for-profits, the payback is much, much longer. It can be more difficult. That's why it's a little bit harder to see schools and universities using a lot of renewable energy. 100% of your return coming in about 5 years. 5 to 6 years is a real typical payback of what we see in the Georgia power territory here in Atlanta with real typical commercial rates. So that's a 5 to 6 year payback. Again, solar panels are warranted for 25 years of production. They will produce energy for 25 years. At year 25, they'll have 80% the amount of energy from day one. And we're already seeing that solar panels may actually be a 30, 35 year product. They seem to go through some degradation and then kind of plane out after about 10 years and kind of stop degrading. This is a hedge against rising fossil fuel rates. As Don mentioned, rates typically go up 2.5% a year. So if you buy a portion and own a portion of your energy, you're locking in that rate for the next 25, 30 years with no escalation. And so that's a great way to find savings and plan out your budget. And of course, it's long-term, zero emission and reliable, low maintenance energy. Solar panels, there's no moving parts. It's solid state. The sun shines every day. You're going to make energy. You're going to have savings daily. On cloudy days, you won't make as much as sunny days, but you know the sunny days are coming. And so very reliable, low risk energy production. I thought I'd talk real quickly about the investment tax credits. It's such a big part of a solar investment. It's 30%. It's a federal tax credit. So it's not a tax deduction like when you donate to a not-for-profit, you get to reduce your income and income deduction. The tax credit is the bottom of the page, the amount you owe the federal government, you reduce it. That's a tax credit. It's a dollar for dollar credit. And so right now, through the next year, through 2019, it's at 30%, and that starts to sunset. Projects that are completed in the year 2020 will be at 26%, 2021, 22, and then it drops to 10% in perpetuity after that. So there's a window right now. You can start budgeting now to make sure you get an installation completed by 2019, so you get the full 30% value of the tax credit. And the IRS recently came out with an announcement that they've really spelled out the rules as to what qualifies for being completed in 2019. You don't have to be 100% completed. You just have to start construction. So if you purchased the system and you started putting panels on the roof before the end of 2019, you'll get that 30% tax credit in your grandfather year. And then the modified accelerated cost recovery system, or also called the depreciation schedule. It's currently law. A lot of states follow the federal, so the federal moved it to a one-year depreciation schedule. Georgia hasn't adopted the one-year schedule. It's still 6 years here in Georgia. Each state kind of varies, so you'll have to talk to your own accountant. The amount is dropped. The corporate tax rate, if you're a C Corp, the highest rate is 21%, but if you're an LLC, you can still depreciate 30%. So depending on how you're incorporated, you might be doing more than 54%. You might be doing something like 60%. So you just have to talk to your own accountant. I don't want to get too far into, I'm not a tax professional, but I play one on occasion. But talk to your tax professional and they can really share with you how all that plays out. And here's the pricing. So we have discounted group pricing. As you see, as more people sign up, the price drops. It gets lower and lower to that $3.55 level. We've also got fixed rates for really small projects, and very large projects can get even lower. If somebody wants to do a megawatt on their roof, a big warehouse wants to really knock it out of the park, or a Home Depot-sized building, or a UPS-sized building, you could get special pricing for that project. So one of the things that I'm finding out that a lot of people don't know about solar, unlike buying a car, most people know you look under the hood, you kick the tires, you drive it around the block. But for most people buying solar, it's your first time ever doing that. So there's a lot of questions and concern. And so when you buy solar, if you have a flat roof, there'll be no holes in your roof. And a lot of people don't know that solar now will just sit on your roof. You'll have no problems maintaining the warranty of that membrane. A flat roof, this is a typical racking system. It's bent steel. It's got rubber footers that are the same material as most roofing types. So that's called a ballasted system. It's just weighted down. It comes in at 3 to 4 pounds per square foot. Roofs by code have to be built to handle about 20 pounds of live load. So I've never seen a roof that we weren't able to build solar on effectively. Another real common roofing type is standing metal seam. We clamp onto that metal seam with these brackets, and then we set our rails and the panels attached to that. So again, no holes in a standing metal seam roof. And the connection there is metal to metal. It's very stout, really strong. We have 80 installations in coastal Georgia as part of Solarize Tybee and Solarize Savannah work. Hurricane Matthew came through the end of 2016. It's class 3, class 4 hurricane. They evacuated everyone out of the island there, but we didn't lose a single panel off of the roof with 80 installations there. The metal-to-metal connections are great, and we follow all the codes, whatever the wind codes may be. We understand coastal Georgia. We understand Atlanta, which is even lighter wind code. And when properly built, we put a torque wrench on each bolt, very meticulous about our quality control. And so we know that everyone will get a quality system built with no problems. So who are the big winners? Who should really be considering installing solar? If you have a big flat roof and you're 3-phase, 480 volt powered, that's our lowest cost installation. Once again, you can load up that roof. There's no shade issues. You can load that up. We can power right to your panel, and you will use that energy in real time. And so in Georgia, it's really easy to get about 50% of your power bill powered by renewable energy. If you're a retailer and you're open 7 days a week and you're open during the daylight hours, we can go even a little bit deeper than that. If, however, you're a bank, we're doing a bank installation, they're only a half day on Saturday, they're closed on Sunday. If you want to do more than 50%, you need battery storage to go a little bit farther there. So depending on the net metering policy in Florida and the Carolinas, we can go to 100% because the net metering policy is different. But here in Solarize Atlanta, with Georgia Power's net metering policy being what it is, 50% is really typical. This is a local company, Haverty's Furniture. I don't know if you can see their sign in the background. They have a 124,000 watt system, 124 kW system on their roof. This is a retailer because they're open 7 days a week. This is powering 85% of their energy. They're paying around $40,000 to $35,000 a year in energy. They're now saving 85% of that with solar. So that's a big savings for them. Those are real numbers. That's a significant addition to their marketing budget. You can hire a person for that, an entry-level salesperson. You had a question?
Yeah, how many floors, how many stories is that building?
This is a one-story building.
Okay.
This is a typical big box retailer. It's about a 20, 25-foot tall roof. They have a lot of lighting in there to make it look nice and pretty with all of the furniture underneath. A lot of air conditioning to keep people comfortable and cozy. So this is in Greenville, South Carolina. The Duke Energy net metering allows any overproduction. You get that kilowatt hour credit. So that's why we're able to go at 85% there for Haverty's. This is another view of their roof. So this is the system here. There's a windscreen along the back that stops the wind from getting under the panel. Again, it's that same bent steel. We bring out our own strips of rubber, so there's actually nothing touching your roof, and that's how you maintain your roof warranty. So this was a Carlisle roof. They came out and inspected before we arrived. They certified the roof was under warranty. We did our installation, and Carlisle comes back out, recertifies the warranty, so the documents are all there to maintain the roof. So that's a great innovation now. Solar, the industry has listened to these concerns, and there's been a lot of innovation with the products now. So no holes, no penetrations in this roof whatsoever. We also do a lot of work with storage companies. Storage companies, I know they have a lot of big square footage, and they often have air conditioning controlled storage areas. They have the energy load that they need to offset. They have a lot of revenues, they need the tax credit, so it all kind of lines up really well, storage companies. And they often have the standing metal seam roof, so again, you can rack right off of that, no holes in this roof either. So this is the Mercedes-Benz Stadium, LEED Platinum building, most recently built major stadium in the United States. We covered the Silver Deck parking lot with solar. As you see here in the lower left corner, that is a giant canopy covering the top floor of that parking deck. So for a lot of commercial buildings, the top floor of your parking deck is the most underutilized part of the parking. No one wants to bake their car all day long and get in there. It's hard to valet park cars on the top floor because you don't want to bake someone's car and charge them money for it. They can't touch the steering wheel. So putting canopies on the top of parking decks has become very popular. There's a lot of cost-effective solutions for that. You get the value of shade, which is hard to put a number on, but again, we all know that's very valuable. And you've got a large square footage area to now fill with solar to power the big building. So you might have a large office tower, not much room to put panels on the top, but you've got a parking deck nearby, so now the parking deck can power the tower. We're also covering parking decks for apartment complexes. If you have a multi-tenant building and you want to lower your CAM rate, the common area maintenance, for all the interior lighting and air conditioning, the elevators, swimming pools, all that common area electricity, you can cover your parking deck or put solar on the roof and lower that. And that's really important for entities that are looking to lease up buildings and then sell them. You'll be able to sell at a higher multiple after you get that CAM rate down, and solar can help you achieve that. So those are the main clients that we sell to. Those are the main types. Happy to answer any other questions that might be on solar installation.
I had a quick question. I don't know if it'd be for you or for Don, but it seems like both of y'all said that the payback period is 3 to 5 years. So for somebody like myself who I don't know where I'm going to be in 3 years, have y'all thought about going after apartment contractors or kind of going into more short-term living situations, or is that something not really feasible?
So yeah, it's really difficult to power individual apartments because the cost of interconnecting to each individual unit gets to be really expensive. So the solution for people in apartments is what's called community solar, that utilities will have a faraway solar field that you can buy through your power bill certain amounts of solar energy. So that's for people that want to be transient and move, that's your solution. If you've got a 20-year lease on a building and you know you're going to be there 20 years, well, solar makes a lot of sense. Haverty's Furniture leases about half their buildings. They do long-term leasing though, and so they see the payback and it makes sense for them. If you own your building and you know you're going to be there for a while, then it really makes sense as well. So it's an easier decision to make when you have a little bit more long-term plans. Yeah.
So it seems like, as you mentioned before, or maybe Don or Matt did, very low maintenance. The technology's really come a long ways. Do you have to every 5 to 10 years make a visit, or is it set for the 25 years? Do you give maybe a homeowner, if it's a residential instructions, twice every other year, clean off the leaves? And what is the maintenance like?
Yeah, so again, the panels themselves are solid state, so there's no moving parts. It is suggested every other year to clean them, and that can be done with a pressure washer. The front of a solar panel is tempered glass, just like a car windshield. So any squeegee can clean it off. There's not special solutions needed or special cleaners. In Georgia, we get 50 inches of rain on average a year. Hanna Solar, we have 250 panels on our roof. We've never cleaned our panels because the pollen season comes in April, but the rain comes in May, and so it all just seems to work out that we get enough rain and it stays clean enough. We do offer operations and maintenance, so there is that desire to want that, and we totally get that. And so we do annual checkups for operations and maintenance. We come out with an infrared gun. We'll look at all the panels. If one has faulted or had a problem, it'll get very hot and it'll glow a different color from the rest. But we can remove that panel and get that warranty, get that replaced. Solar panels, there's really good manufacturing processes now. We buy a lot from China, Korea, Taiwan. Asian manufacturing is not what it used to be. The Germans have invested, the Austrians have sent their robotic equipment there. So really rare for us to find a problem with the solar panel. The inverters are changing that from DC to AC energy. There's some heat there, some fans. Sometimes the inverters will have problems. And so those are connected through cell towers. We can often, just like with your computer, you have a problem with your computer, what do? You turn it off, turn it back on. We can remotely log into the inverters, do a reset. If that doesn't fix it, then we roll a truck. They might need a replacement part. Inverters typically have a 10 to 15 year warranty. So the only maintenance you might have is about 10, 15 years in, you might need to replace your inverters throughout the life of the system.
Sounds really good, and I love the examples you showed. You don't have to put holes in the roof, maintain that roof warranty. It seems easier than I ever imagined, and so that I'm really excited about that. I'm curious, if I'm still unsure and I want that free evaluation, how long do I have to wait? Can you get to my building in a week or two?
Yeah, we were kind of backed up. Initially, when the program launched, we had a lot of a big influx of interest, and so we've gotten back in touch with those people, and so we're on about a 2 to 3 week turnaround.
Okay.
The first thing that we need is your billing data. When you go to the dentist, you got to open your mouth and say ah, and let them look inside. We need your data in order to devise the whole payback period and see how much energy you use. How much roof space do you have? You can fit this amount of solar. Here's your payback. That's all. So as soon as we get the data, we're about a 2 to 3 week turnaround to getting the design, getting a proposal back to the client, have them consider.
And then you come out and check out my roof. It takes like an hour or so.
Yeah, that's really about a 20 to 30-minute visit typically. If we can talk to your facility maintenance person, they can also just take a picture of their switch gear. There's a plate at the top that has all the specs. If they can email that to us or text it to us, we can just do everything remotely, give you a good ballpark proposal, or we go on site. I'll take those pictures myself. We like to take a look at the roof, just see what the parapet heights are, how tall are your air conditioning units, and we can model in the shade that might be happening there. So it's good to get on site, take a look at things. So a quick review of your roof, a quick review of the electrical room, getting an annual data set of the energy use in the building, and we're off and running.
Awesome. And I love that you said, parking decks. Like, it doesn't always have to be a roof, right? The parking decks, I think, huge opportunity there.
Absolutely. It's a little bit more expensive to install on a roof. It's just panels and a little bit of metal, so that's pretty inexpensive. For a parking deck, you're building structure, so it's like building in addition to your building. It's a bit more expensive, but once that's in, you've got the value of shade, and you've got constant energy production, so it works out really well for buildings that are multi-story, don't have the roof space available, the parking decks. It's a real win-win. Another thing that's driving a lot of the parking deck adoption is that the city of Atlanta has an ordinance that any new parking deck has to be 20% EV ready. Oh. So there must be electrical panels and the conduit run to prepare it for electrical vehicle charging of those vehicles. And so some of the clients that we're talking to now, there's cranes all over the city, new buildings are getting built. They're going to be built to that standard. So the existing buildings are saying, well, within 4 or 5 years, these buildings are going to be leasing up. We have to future-proof our building. We've got to have the same bells and whistles, keep up with the Joneses. If they're adding these things, we've got to add it as well. And so if you're going to add all this electrical infrastructure for EV charging, it's just that little bit more to add for solar. And now you've got the electrical infrastructure to carry that energy back to the building. So because of the EV ordinance, parking decks with big open spaces, because of the shade, because of the energy production, it's all kind of coming together and finding some synergy.
Let's touch a little more on that EV, because I think, there's so much criticism over these electric vehicles. What kind of electricity are they being powered by? And people like to see that direct connection. Like, could you help facilitate EV charging stations with a solar panel right on top, so people see like, hey, my car is actually getting charged by the sun? Is that something you guys work with?
That is possible. So Hannah Solar, our building, we have 250 solar panels on the roof, and it's powering our building. Computers, air conditioning, whatever load is being demanded, it's going to be powered. And so when someone plugs in one of our chargers, it charges the car, like I do every morning. Okay. I'm charging on sunshine. That's how we fill our car. To remotely do that, you'd need like several dozen solar panels to charge a car. So even one panel wouldn't be enough. You'd be powering off of the grid. But a large parking deck at that Mercedes-Benz Stadium, as I was mentioning, underneath that parking deck, we've got 24 electric vehicle chargers. And so if you're there charging up underneath, you are charging from that energy up above. So it is possible to charge and drive on sunshine.
Perfect, and that's great PR. That's what we all want.
Absolutely.
This is really great. Any more questions?
I just had a comment with the new ordinance in Atlanta requiring 20% of your parking to be EV ready, I guess. That's an expense, and I think when you add solar to that equation, then it gives you an opportunity to balance that expense out with an income generating asset. And so, and then you're able to, like you just mentioned, make that connection between the solar panel and the EV charging station. It just makes a lot of sense. If you're going to do the EV charging stations, to also take a look at the solar as well.
That's right.
Thank you for supporting that, and I love how you called that future-proofing. As green building professionals, we're talking a lot about resilience and regenerative strategies, and I think you're exactly right. Like in 5 years, these are not going to be options anymore. These are going to be mandates, and so get in now, stay ahead of the curve, be a leader in green buildings.
That's right. Tax credits are going to start to sunset, so get while the getting's good. Do your project now. Solarize Atlanta has done a great job of starting to counter the typical objections to adopting solar. People don't know what product should I buy, who's a reputable installer, what's a fair price, how do I deal with the financing, and all that's been figured out by Solarize Atlanta. They did an open RFP, all the solar companies threw their name into the hat. Hannah Solar won commercial side, so we've got the best pricing, and we'll help you analyze your building. We'll help you get the right fit, the right products at the right price.
And I don't think we've emphasized this enough, but this is fully supported by the City of Atlanta government and the mayor's office, and not financially supported, but motivationally supported. So this is not some kind of private gimmick trying to get you on the bandwagon. This is literally a citywide initiative. It's a coalition of so many organizations. The USGBC is behind it, GBES is behind it, and we want to get you behind it. So if you got questions, solarizeatl.com, call us up. It's no pressure for the free evaluation, right? You can come out, tell us how easy it is, show us this quick payback, and I don't have to commit. I just can educate myself.
That's right. So again, the deadline is before Halloween. Just go to solarizeatlanta.com. You just have to sign up. There's no commitment other than just putting your name and that you want to be contacted and learn more and get that evaluation. Then you'll have to turn over your energy data, and we do non-disclosure agreements. If you feel like that's proprietary information, we can hold that in confidence. And then you have until April 2019 to actually sign a contract and commit yourself to moving forward. So